So hi everyone, my name is Mike. I'm a careers and employability consultant here at Beckett Careers. I've also got my colleague Sorrel as well, who's
Hello, hi.
also a careers and employability consultant. And today we're going to talk about assessment centres, talk about, go through some of the hints and tips on how you prepare for an assessment centre. And we'll talk about assessment centres in a traditional sense, where you would sort of have one at an employer at their office, which we hope we'll all get back to soon. But I'll also talk about assessment centres in like a virtual sense as well that are happening more and more at this moment in time. So first off, just a little bit of housekeeping. I think most of you are doing this already, which is great. We're on Thursday now. I'm sure you've attended some other sessions and got used to this, but yeah, just please, for the time being, just remain on mute and turn off your video. We are recording this, as I've mentioned, and if you do have a question, please use the chat function. We'd love to hear from you. We've got time to answer questions at the end, and we'll do our best to get through those as well. So please do use that chat function. And then just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to go over some background to assessment centres, some hints and tips. And then, like I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit in more detail about virtual assessment centres. A lot of the ways to prepare for them are quite similar, but there are some key points to remember and to consider. And then we'll talk about 3 of the key components of an assessment centre, both online and in person: the presentation task, the group task, and also the interview as well. And then, like I say, at the end we've got time for some Q&A. So, like I say, just pop the questions in the question tab, and we'll go through those at the end. So first off, just having a little look at why do employers use assessment centres. So they definitely see them as a more reliable way to assess candidates because it can be a lot more thorough and in-depth. Because it's over an extended period of time and they put you in a range of different situations, they're able to test a number of different key competencies. So, for example, they may test your communication and your teamwork in a group task. They may test some of your competencies in an interview. They may test your confidence and public speaking within the presentation. So it's all of these different skills and attributes that they can test over the course of the whole day. And also there's quite a lot of pressure, so they'll see how you react under that pressure. And also, whereas in an interview, it would probably be like a panel interview where you might be one-on-one, or two employees speaking to you. They don't get to see how you work with other people. Whereas at an assessment centre, they can see how you work with other people in the group task, how you sort of communicate with other people, how you build rapport with other people throughout the course of the day. So other candidates that are there, other members of staff like the assessors and things like that. So it's a much broader and in-depth way of assessing candidates rather than the traditional interview. And just on virtual assessment centres, so obviously a lot of the employers that we work with, a lot of graduate employers have moved their assessments online. So just some really important things to consider. A lot of the ways to prepare, I would say, for the content are pretty similar, but there are some things to prepare for in terms of the format and the platform that are really key. So the first one would be to practice with the technology, whether that's Microsoft Teams like we're using today, or Zoom. Google Hangouts is another one as well. What I would do is get yourself used to that, hopefully over the course of this week and over the next few weeks as we do more things, more events for students, and they'll all be on Teams. It's a chance for you to get used to that, and that should stand you in good stead, but definitely get into the habit of using it. What a lot of employers are doing at the moment, if they're holding virtual assessment centres, is they'll run like a trial session the day before, just to make like a run through, just to make sure you can access the link okay, your microphone and technology is working, and that you will be able to participate in the session the following day. So that's a really good thing that they're doing, but it's really good practice to get used to the technology now. So that means making sure your camera and microphone is working as well. Also, dress to impress. Even though it's you are doing it from home, or from your bedroom, things like that, it's still important to dress as if you were at an actual assessment centre. So full sort of interview attire, I would say, is the best way to prepare. And then there's also, I would say, preparing for any assessment centre, you need thorough preparation, but it's really important when it's online as well. Just like I said, preparing thoroughly, because I think a lot of students may be thrown a little bit by things being online. I think everyone's been thrown a little bit and had to adapt and change to this situation, whatever they're doing. So you want to take a little bit of that sort of concern out of the way if you can, by preparing and being thorough in the way that you prepare on the platform and the way that you've prepared for the actual assessment. And then just the other three things: just stay calm, be confident, and be yourself. I think that's the key thing. I think with all assessment centres, they are looking for, they've invited you because they're interested in you, and they want to see the best version of yourself in that situation and across the different activities. So it's important for you to just be yourself and not worry about what you think they might want to see, but just be sort of who you are, basically, and how you would react in those situations. Just specifically on virtual assessment centres, I've just included some links to some really good resources there. The top two are specifically for virtual assessment centres, and then the bottom one is a link to our Get Hired resource centre, which includes a number of different resources and links out to other things to help you prepare for an assessment centre. So please do, like I said, we're recording this, so if you want to grab a quick take a quick photo of those to come back to later, because there's some really useful stuff there. So what can you typically expect on an assessment day? So almost certainly there'll be a group activity. There could be an in-tray, or they're being called e-tray exercises now. You could face a case study, role play, almost certainly a presentation of some description. Psychometric tests are often involved. An interview will almost certainly be involved, and then there's a sort of social event. So if we break those down, we'll talk a little bit more about the group activity shortly and how to prepare for it. But an in-tray or e-tray exercise is where you get you get a sort of series of different tasks. It could be everything from having to write a report for your manager that's due in an hour, through to having to sign the card for someone that's leaving, and everything in between. And it's your job in the task to put those tasks in order of priority, in the order that you would do them. So it allows the assessor to see how you would structure your day, basically. You might have a case study. I know Leeds City Council, one of the employees that we work with, you use this quite a lot, where they give you something to read and analyse and then present back on. There may be a role play. I think most people probably find role plays a little bit awkward. I know I do. But they're a really great way of assessing how you might act in a particular situation. So definitely prepare for those. Presentation we'll talk a little bit about in the next couple of slides. Psychometric tests. So this can include things like verbal and numerical reasoning, situational judgment, personality tests, those kinds of things. So there are some ways to prepare for that. On the resource centre that I mentioned on the previous slide, there are some resources in there on our Get Hired pages. But yeah, there's quite often you do these prior to the assessment centre, but sometimes they're involved in the day as well. And one thing that a lot of employers are doing now as well, just in case it throws you a little bit, it's called gamification, where you'll be completing a psychometric test, but they'll do it in the form of it'll seem like it's a game to play. Obviously, the interview that we talked about, and then when we say social event, sometimes there may be sort of food and drinks afterwards, or it might be lunch provided. And I think what we mean by this is that it's really important to remember that you're being assessed all the time. You know, the people, the employers will be looking at how you behave in those sort of particular scenarios. So even though it's not part of the actual assessed part of the day in terms of like the group task, the interview, it's a sort of reminder to stay, you know, be aware that these people are constantly assessing how you act in these different situations. So, you know, how you speak to other candidates, how you speak to the people that are there, how you spend your time. Do you interact? Do you spend all the time on your phone? You know, that's what we'd advise not to do. So yeah, it's just a reminder to be aware that in those what seem like sort of down periods, you are still being assessed. So it's just to be aware of that. And then, so what are graduate employers looking for? So these are just some of the things that they're looking for, that they would see as being graduate attributes. The good news is that over your time at Leeds Beckett, you should have, you know, developed, you know, most, if not all, of these skills and attributes, and be able to talk about them in an interview. So it's things like problem-solving skills, being proactive, you know, having a commitment to provide, you know, the best service, interpersonal communication skills, and working with others. A lot of these things that you'll get from you know, having studied here and completed your degree. Other things, you know, you can use them from maybe part-time work that you've done, volunteering. So being really organised, having an eye for detail, that's a really important one. Commercial awareness is an important one. So for those that don't know, commercial awareness basically means being aware of where I suppose the knowing about the industry that you want to work in, what are the challenges for it, what's happening in it that might affect the actual company that you or plan to work for. It's just having that sort of sense of, I suppose, the world of employment. We do run will be running some specific sessions on that, so that you can get a little bit more of an idea about how you can prepare for that, how you can learn more and gather more information on that. They want to see that you're really motivated and that you have a good fit to the organisation as well. Just on the fit to the organisation, that sometimes might seem like it's a difficult one to prepare for, because it's a little bit of an unknown. But what I would say here is just read up on the company that you're going for the assessment centre with. Have a look at their values, their sort of their mission, their vision. You know, do the values that they have. Do you agree with those? Do you hold the same ones? What can you learn about what they do? Not just in a sort of business sense, but some of the extra things that they do, often, you know, things like community work, charity work, and then you can see whether that's a good organisational fit for you. So that's the best way to prepare for that, I would say.
And I think as well, sorry, just to add to that,
yeah, of course.
I think in terms of fit, I think that be yourself thing that you mentioned before, Mike, is also really important to that too. Because I think, you know, you might get a certain impression from a company or from the staff maybe that you speak to and think, oh, this is how people at that company act, or this is how they might behave, or this must be the type of person that they're looking for. But, you know, quite often they're looking to recruit people who are different to themselves, who can bring different skills. You know, they're looking for all different types of people. So there's not kind of just a one size fits all, I guess, as well. For working at any particular organisation, it's good to have a real balance of different skills and experiences and personality types as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, completely agree. It's, you know, it's really important to be yourself, as we've mentioned, and it definitely fits for that as well. So how would you approach an assessment centre? So we talked about being confident. I know that that's often easier said than done, but, you know, remind yourself that you've been shortlisted for a reason. You know, they want to speak to you because they've liked what they've seen in your application so far. And you know, to the point to get to an assessment centre, you most likely would have had to obviously complete an application. You'll maybe give your CV. You might have already done the tests, so they think, right, based on the psychometric tests, we'd like to know more about you. But more often, in most cases as well, you'll have done some sort of either a phone interview or a video interview, maybe just a quick or provided a video presentation. But basically, the point I'm getting at is that they like what they see of you so far. Therefore, you should feel confident going in there that there's something about you that they want to learn more about, and then it's up to you to show them that. And on that, it's really important to stay positive throughout. You know, in most cases, you know, you've got, say, the different tasks. If one doesn't go quite as well as maybe you hoped for, which people often think at assessments and interviews and things like that, don't be down about it. Just be positive and think, right, well, maybe that didn't go as well as I thought in the interview, but the group task's coming up, you know, that's my chance to shine. You know, so try and stay positive throughout, and keep telling yourself the first one that they want to see more of you. They want to see you for a reason, and show them what's great about you. We talked a lot about, you know, being yourself. You know, to the point again at the end, but you know, we can't reiterate it too much, really. Be yourself and really show them the best version of you and what's great about you, because like I said, they want to see you. And then I think it's really important as well to take time to reflect and consider the feedback. There's a lot of sort of there can be some waiting around periods at an assessment centre. You might complete your group task and then maybe have an hour before your interview time slot. That's just the way things work sometimes. So it's really important in that time to think about what's gone before, what went well, what you can learn from it, what's coming up. You know, think about that, and at the end of the day as well, take time to reflect and listen to the feedback as well that you get on that as well. So one of the key things that you would be expected to complete at an assessment centre would be some form of a presentation task, or it could be an introduction. It might just be introducing yourself. So just the sort of graphic on the right there, this is the makeup of face-to-face communication, and you know, there's different sort of percentages that you get on this, but the gist is that, you know, the words that you say form the smallest part actually of the communication. A lot of it is about your body language and your tone of voice. So those are really important things to remember. And when you are introducing yourself or presenting, it's really important to maintain eye contact with the audience. Obviously, that's a little bit more difficult in a virtual setting, but that's what we talked about before, about getting used to the technology beforehand. And I think, so we've spoken before, haven't we, about being at home in your little sort of square that is behind you. You've got to be sort of confident with that, because that's what people see of you. So you've got to sort of be able to, you know, it's about maintaining eye contact with the audience, but remaining, you know, being, you know, looking professional within that little square.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think eye contact, it's looking directly at the camera. I think it's always really tempting to kind of look at you, like I'm doing exactly right now.
Yeah, me too.
But it's always really tempting just to look at yourself, but you've got to look directly to the camera. That's you know, to try and make that eye contact and build that rapport as well with the assessors and the other team members who you'll be working with on the day.
And yeah, and just remain calm, speak clearly, and just the bottom point there as well, looking beyond your degree. I think that's really important. What we mean by that is the assessor may ask you to talk, you know, mention something interesting about yourself, maybe one of your biggest achievements, you know, different things like that. And I think what we would say is that they because you're all graduates and at a graduate assessment centre, they know that you've got the degree. They'll be assessing some of the skills that you've learned from that throughout the day, but this is your opportunity to let them know other things that you've done. So maybe teams that you've been involved with, sports that you've played, societies that you've been involved with, if you've been a course rep, any voluntary charity work, summer camps that you've done abroad, all of those types of things. This is where you can really add that in and add some real content and value to your presentation there. So we'll just talk about the group task quickly as well. Almost every assessment centre that you go to will have a group task of some description, and that remains the case in a virtual format as well. So the main things, it sounds obvious, but read the instructions really carefully, and sort of be clear about what the objectives are within the task, and try and agree on a plan at the start. We always talk about using persuasion, consensus, negotiating, maybe arguing a point reasonably, to come to some sort of consensus, rather than voting, just saying, well, put your hands up if you think this. They'd want to see a little bit more developed communication style. I think this is really important as well, the keeping to time. We run loads of assessment centres, and like every time, students always ask, how long have I got left? Or they'll speak amongst themselves and say, oh, I think we've probably had about 10 minutes, and they've actually been going for 20, and it's only a 25-minute task, something like that. So it's really important to keep to the time and assign a timekeeper as well. It's so important, really. We can't stress it. And then encourage everyone to contribute as well, because that shows that you're a really good team player. So if someone in the group hasn't said something or hasn't said as much as the other group, maybe you could say, well, what do you think of this point? Have you got any thoughts on this? Because that's, in the real sort of life of, when you're working in a graduate role, you would be working in teams. Everyone would be expected to contribute. And it's good for you to bring those people in. It shows a really strong and developed communication style. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about interviews, because they will be part of it. I know there's some other interview stuff happening this afternoon and things, so I'll just touch on this, and then we'll go to questions. So, like I say, assessment centres almost always involve interviews. So there's two main types that graduate recruiters are using, either entirely or a combination of, and that's strengths-based interviews and competency-based interviews. So within strengths-based, this really focuses on you, what are your strengths, what do you enjoy doing, what do you have a natural aptitude for, and what really sort of gives you energy when you're doing it. So there's no real right or wrong answers here, and some different examples of those types of questions would be, tell me something you're really proud of, what does a successful day look like for you, I always like this one, what's the last thing to be done on your to-do list as well. So no right or wrong answers, but they very much learning about you as a person. And then also, again, hopefully you've heard of the STAR technique. If not, there's a session this afternoon where you can learn about it in a lot more detail. But STAR technique is something that's used to answer competency-based questions, competency being behaviour or skill, something that's critical to the role. So it's a way of looking at evidence of your past behaviour to predict what your future performance would be. So when have you previously demonstrated that competency? So a lot of these questions tend to start with, give me an example of a time, or tell me about a time when you had a challenging problem to solve, or tell me about a time when you showed really great communication, or tell me about a time where you had to work in a team. What was your role? So just to, like I say, go over it just quickly. The STAR technique is situation, task, action, results, being the situation where you talk about what your role was and what you were doing. The task being what you had to do. So this would be the challenging problem you had to solve. The action is where you put, this is the greatest portion of your answer, where you put a lot of the detail in on what you did to make sure you met that challenging problem, and then the result at the end, what came of it. So there's loads more stuff on that we've got, and I think there is a session this afternoon.
Yeah, there's one this afternoon. That's at 2:45. Sorry, 3:45. If you do want to log on to that, you're very welcome to join us. And we'll just be going into STAR in a bit more detail because it's a technique that's useful kind of across the whole of the selection process. So it's brilliant for interviews, but it's also really good for application forms as well when you're just kind of first starting out in that process. So definitely join us for that. It's only 15 minutes, so yeah, join us if you can.
Yeah, I really recommend it. 'Cause like I say, I've just gone over it in a minute or so there, but there's loads more detail that it can be used for, like Sorrel says, in various different points of the process. So definitely book onto that this afternoon. 3:45?
Yes.
3:45, yeah.
3:45.
And that's kind of it in terms of the slides that we've got. I just wanted to say before we go to questions in the bar, do keep in touch with us. We're on all the social media platforms. At Beckett Careers is our handle for Twitter and Instagram. And if you do want to get in touch directly with us, careers@leedsbeckett.ac.uk is another way to do that as well. And then I will see if there's any questions. Oh, it's 2:45.
It is 2:45. I was right the first time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 2:45.
So 2:45 is to answer that first question this afternoon. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please pop them in the tab in the conversation. If anyone's got any feedback that they'd like to share with us, hope you found it useful today.
Thank you. Just to add, if you do want to give a try maybe to answering some questions online, it's not quite the same as an assessment centre, but we do have a video interview simulator that you can access through MyHub, and you can use that. You can record yourself practicing answering some questions and sort of practicing a little bit of that technique of using the camera and sort of talking to camera, and you'll get some feedback on your answers and stuff too, and you can kind of review what you look like so you get an idea of what an assessor might be seeing when they look at you during the real thing. So that might be useful to check that out too on MyHub.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, and I think following that, so we hosted a virtual mock assessment centre a couple of weeks ago, and we are hosting another one on the 16th of July, which I think is 2 weeks today. So it's a good chance for you to have a go at a group task in a virtual setting, have a go at a presentation, and then get a video interview and some feedback from a member of Beckett Careers. So it'll be myself and Sorrel and some other of our colleagues. So I think the whole point of it is for you to, we mentioned before, getting used to the online platforms, but also getting used to what an assessment centre might entail, and hopefully what we feel would be a supportive environment for you to get some experience of that if you're ready to prepare for one that's coming up for real. If there's no more questions then, and we're on sort of 12 o'clock, we're down for half an hour, so we're sort of finishing bang on time, I'll stop the recording and wish everyone a good day.
Yeah. And if you do want to access the recording afterwards, you can get that through MyHub too, and they should all be added by next week. Thank you.